General Basinger, I've got to compliment you in this cyberspace social media environment for your resilience in adapting and being to the environment. That was a good middle brief. I actually have two questions. The first one is tied to attribution and the need in deterrence theory to signal our intent to use or not use different tools in an attack. So do you have any thoughts on when we would use or not use cyber and how we'd signal that? And in an asymmetric approach to a cyber attack, when we would use a kinetic response to a cyber attack? I know everyone's wrestling with that, but so there's no definitive answer, but I'd like to know what your thoughts are. And then you said that, and quoting the author that you, Goodman, that in order to be effective in deterrence, you need symmetry, or you need either to be superior or at least symmetry to be effective in cyber deterrence. And I would also point out a colleague of ours at the War College, Con Crane, who wrote that a superior in this thing is also the most vulnerable, often to their own attack. And to the degree that the U.S. and Canada are probably superior in our cyber prowess, I worry about some non-state actors that may not be very vulnerable to a cyber attack, and anything that we would use to attack them would impose a penalty on us. If you'd like to comment on either of those two, I'd appreciate it.
So if you could just give me the first part of your question again, I missed that.
Okay, the first question is tied to attribution and the
Right.
signaling for deterrence theory. What should we signal as far as when we would use or not use cyber as a deterrent punishment? And secondly, when we should use or not use a kinetic response to a cyber attack?
Right. So thanks. Good suite of questions there. I can tell you that the Canadian government is wrestling with the signaling problem. Fair to say we are collective thinking strategically on how to respond to cyber as an evolving conundrum. I know that colleagues are working in the government on some legislation, putting together some legislation for government consideration on how we might approach that problem. I can't get into the details of that because it's still, these are confidential kind of discussions, but it is something that we're working on, and clearly coming through the end of that process with whatever comes out would be an attempt to signal that. And I think some U.S. colleagues, probably the United States a little bit further in its maturity here on that, to clarify what things would be the do not touch or else kind of stuff that governments want to make clear, sovereign states want to make clear with potential adversaries. And of course, the piece that comes along with that, perhaps getting to the next part of your question, is so what's the appropriate response for these kinds of things? If you do touch, if you do mess around with us in cyber or otherwise, how are we going to respond? And to make the point that it has to be a response, maybe not necessarily immediate, but we like to think that some of those things need to happen at network speed. So, and of course, as I believe I was trying to get to here, the way I would look at those responses is it's not just responding kind, cyber for cyber. It's you have all the instruments of national power, and we're clearly in our response to the Russian aggression that we're seeing these days. Economic sanctions are one of those levers that you can pull, right? So diplomacy and economics factors, as well as the military presence that we're pushing into the Baltic. So what are we doing in cyber? Well, we're doing stuff, right? Of course we're doing stuff. We're not in a state of non-use of cyber. It's happening all the time, right? I think that's well known. The number of cyber attacks happening globally is in the millions, billions per day, right? It's prevalent. We are in it. the conflicts is ongoing. So the question is, how do you clarify when is too much, right? When have you touched something through cyber and I'm going to have to respond? I'm compelled to respond. Otherwise, you're just inviting more, right? So we are, in Canada, I can tell you that we are still trying to catch up a little bit in this space. Again, I can mention the billions of dollars we're trying to pump downrange to get ahead of that, or at least catch up to it. So we're not quite there yet. In terms of using non-kinetic responses, of course, those are always on the table. And when you're dealing with the kinds of issues that we were kind of seeing on the screen there, obviously you know that we're heavily using kinetic or physical means to deal with these kinds of information war capabilities of our adversaries. Did I miss any part of your question? Okay.
So on the second question, Trey, the superiority then makes, having superior capability makes you vulnerable. I think we're seeing that across the whole gambit, because the more advanced we get into the cyber domain, the more we use it, the more General Dorman's talking about how much the logistics is exposed through unclassed networks and stuff. I mean, the more we build things, everything has a chip in it now. So the more we advance into the cyberspace and then therefore have capability, the more we're opening up to vulnerabilities, the more attacks. Whereas the single individual in an internet cafe somewhere who's hacking us is hard to find, hard to affect. So I think that imbalance is going to be, and it just harkens back to General McMaster's famous quote: "There's only two ways to fight the U.S. Army: asymmetrically and stupid." So it's the same thing with all of the big. The more you use it, the more you're potentially vulnerable. But at the same time, if you can't just not use it, because then the adversary's already won. So I think going forward, the protection is going to be an issue. And yes, the small actors are going to be very effective in this domain, and therefore we need to, as Dr. Dauber found, we need to find other ways to find them by getting at where they're uploading their information, for example, or getting at the physical, when it touches the physical domain, find those intersections and affect those some other way. So no, it's going to be fascinating as we go forward. In my opinion, fascinating, frightening. Your call. We've got time for one more question.
Can I chip in
yes,
on
please.
answering the question?
Of course.
With regard to how to deter, for example, individuals, I just wanted to say that I guess there's gonna be some difficult problems in terms of prioritization when we talk about cyber deterrence in the cyberspace, and where we basically need to think hard about where we concentrate our efforts and what types of cyber attacks you want to focus on in terms of generating deterrent capability. And I think that those types of sort of single actor attacks with potentially, well, most people tend to emphasize, as far as I understand, that there are certain actors with a capability to inflict what could possibly come close to unacceptable damage in the cyber domain, and then there is a very large range of actors who are able to inflict certain damage in the cyber domain, but that may not reach sort of the same level of destruction. So I think there's a clear issue of prioritization there. In terms of attribution and retaliation, I think that in the cyber domain, as in all other domains, as we touched on yesterday, there's a balancing act between being precise and concrete and clear about where your red lines are and what capabilities or infrastructure or whatever you want to protect, and keeping a certain level of ambiguity with regard to what the retaliation will look like. And I think in the cyber domain that establishing a certain reputability for carrying out retaliation will be crucial, and again, in this domain as in other domains, words will matter. So it will be possible to connect, to basically communicate regarding your retaliation, at least ex post facto, more effectively perhaps than prior to aggression.